Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. We start with meditation, but then afterwards I share a talk on the teachings of the Buddha. Today, the talk is on chapter 5 of our book, which is titled The Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. In this particular chapter, you learn the core central teaching of the Buddha of how to actually train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. What enlightenment is where the mind's trained to be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this can be eliminated through training of the mind. But you would need to know the wisdom of how to actually do that. And that's where the Eightfold Path comes in. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session first by starting with some chanting to ease into the meditation. If you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. I have the chants over there on the cabinet. You can help yourself to one of the chanting sheets. For those of you guys that are online, you can actually get this from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. Click on free books, and if you scroll down towards the middle of the page, you'll see the chanting sheet there. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to be able to help you during the meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's class. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you can take whatever position is comfortable for you. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking that the Buddha taught. And if you know these positions, you're welcome to use them. Just make yourself comfortable. And then if you like, you can chant along as I mentioned, and then I'll be back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakawa. Excuse me. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Mm. Mm. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะกวาพุทธังมหากวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good evening to you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. What I'm going to be doing is sharing with you guys the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. If somebody was interested in getting to enlightenment, they would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. You would need to commit it to your memory. Oftentimes, students are learning it for the first time, and then they need to get a refresher to be able to understand it multiple times. So it's not a teaching that you just learn once and then you instantly implement it and everything's going wonderful in your life. It actually is gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that's going to lead you to enlightenment. Oftentimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress with this Eightfold Path that led to his enlightenment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through this in a way that you can independently verify his teachings. I'm going to use the original words of the Buddha. It's important that when you're studying the teachings of the Buddha, that you study with his original words. That can sound pretty obvious to some people. Like, of course, you would study the original words of the Buddha if you're going to study his teachings. But I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one temple that actually shares the original teachings of the Buddha. So more likely than not, if you've been visiting temples, you haven't been learning the original teachings of the Buddha, because the vast majority of the world doesn't actually study with the original teachings of the Buddha. But you're going to be able to see his original words, and then I invite you to not believe those teachings. You need to be able to learn them intellectually by examining and investigating them. You need to reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you need to practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And this is where the real transformation occurs. Because what enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. As I shared, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of that can be eliminated from the mind. You get to a point where your mind is focused, you have concentration, clarity, and deep memory, because your mind will be performing optimally by the time you get to enlightenment. You've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings and the lack of concentration and focus and so forth. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. Where in the unenlightened state, you'll have a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility in your mind. And when that comes out, you're going to be damaging your relationships. And oftentimes people think that that's coming from the other person, where in reality, it's actually coming from your own mind. This Eightfold Path is going to teach you how to transform that, where you can be loving and kind and warm and gentle with the people around you, where you don't need to be bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. But again, it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to get to that. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly create that. You'll get to the point where you're not even experiencing a bad mood any longer. As we go, I'm going to be pausing a few times, opening up for whatever questions you have. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can ask any questions that you like. If you're here at the temple and you like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl there. There's some up here as well. All you need to do is come get a microphone, press the gray button, turn that on, and hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share it. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. For anybody online, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom electronically, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So this Eightfold Path, it starts with what's called right view. This is the foundation that's going to help you to build all the other teachings of the Buddha on top of this. If you don't understand right view, you wouldn't understand anything that the Buddha has to share with you. So I'm going to teach you what is right view, and then I'm going to walk you through all of these other steps: right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is organized into 3 sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. Right view is on the bottom because it forms a foundation, and everything else is built on top of that. One of the ways you might think about the Eightfold Path is that if you had a speaker system and you had 8 individual dials and you were trying to get a better and better quality sound out of those speakers, you would tweak these 8 individual dials. Well, the same thing's true about your mind, is that there's these 8 individual dials, and as you tweak these and bring those into your life, you'll see that the mind's performing more and more optimally. And as I shared, it starts with right view. I actually taught this last week as part of this program, and some of you guys were here and some of you weren't. So I'm just going to kind of do a recap on this for the people that weren't here, and then the people who were here, you can get a nice little refresher. It only takes me about 45 minutes to walk through right view, but I'm going to do it in a lot shorter time frame, just as a little bit of a refresher so that we can really focus on the rest of the Eightfold Path. But understand that you really need to be able to focus on understanding what is right view, because everything else is built on that. And if you haven't learned this yet, perhaps this refresh will help you, but I'm also going to pause and see what questions you guys have. So here's the words of the Buddha on what is right view. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching, because the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. He's pointing to a teaching called the Four Noble Truths, and he's saying that's right view. So underneath of this line, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths, so students can build confidence that yes, this is pointing to the Four Noble Truths. But underneath of this, there's more content where the Buddha is teaching what is the Four Noble Truths. And in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. These are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. What the Buddha does is he teaches you the way the world is. He's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's not giving you rules and commandments. He's not teaching you rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. If you're seeing these kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the actual teachings of the Buddha. He's teaching you to cultivate wisdom about the world around you. This is what we mean when we say awakening to enlightenment, is that you're cultivating wisdom to be able to navigate the world through this wisdom of how the world is. When you're experiencing stress, anxiety, and guilt, and shame, and fear, and all these other feelings, this is your mind struggling to live in a world that you don't understand. So in order to get to this enlightened mental state, you need to cultivate wisdom of how the world truly is, so that now you can navigate it more peacefully. So for example, this first universal truth is the universal truth of impermanence. The Buddha helps you to understand that the world's constantly changing, that there's things that arise, change, and fade away. This is important, and you need to be able to independently verify this through looking in the world around you, where you can see that, yes, everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, this is all impermanent. This is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. I walk students through this and help them to be able to independently verify it. Then the Buddha describes the unenlightened mind in the second universal truth, that this is helping you to understand that the unenlightened mind experiences conditioned feelings. What a conditioned feeling is based on some condition, the mind then forms a feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. So if you see that it's sunny outside and you get happy and excited about that, that is conditional happiness. That is a conditioned pleasant feeling, that based on some condition, you will now experience that feeling. But the problem with that is when that condition no longer exists, your mind's going to move to the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. This is the unenlightened mind going up and down and up and down. These are called conditioned feelings, that based on a certain condition, the mind's going to experience a certain feeling. And we refer to this as discontentedness, because the mind is shaken up. It's unsteady, it's unstable, it's uncalm. And when your mind is in that state, it's difficult for you to make decisions. And when you're making unwise decisions and you're putting that out into the world, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. And now when that comes back to you, you'll experience those unwholesome results. Then there's something that I taught called the universal truth of non-self. This is helping you to understand that there is no self here, because what the unenlightened mind does is it clings to this body and it clings to the mind. It clings to your self-image and your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. So for example, if you spilled something on your clothing in a social setting and you were embarrassed by that, that was what's called personal existence view. Your mind is clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only be happy if you're being perceived that way. Or if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, and you were shaken up by this, this is your personal existence view, clinging to this body, this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others a certain way, and you can only be happy if that's the case. This is conditional happiness based on clinging to this physical form of the body. But the mind will also cling to the mind itself, to the self-identity, like maybe your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You can cling to any number of these things as who you think you are as a person, like I am American, or I am Indian, or I am German, or I am Lithuanian, I am Mexican, I am a Brit, I am an Aussie. Any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, any number of things. And now if you cling to that as who you think you are, and you're, say, in a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody says something that is agreeable to you related to your self-identity, you'll experience happiness or excitement. Maybe they'll say, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. And now you're like, wow, they're talking about me. But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disrespectful about people who are from the country that you come from. And now you experience painful feelings. This path is not about changing other people. It's not about going out into the world and trying to convince other people to do things a certain way. It's about training your mind to be able to understand that you can uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. So people are going to sometimes talk in polite, kind, friendly, respectful ways. And sometimes they're going to talk in impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful ways. And you can train your mind to be comfortable and at ease, that you're not experiencing discontentedness. But as long as you have this personal existence view in your mind, thinking that this body or this mind is you, you won't be able to get to that. Then I help students to be able to understand what is a craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking that something external is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. This is where the mind is almost having like an unquenchable thirst, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind will long and yearn for this. This is what we call craving, desire, attachment. It's not the object itself, it's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for it. Once you understand these things, then you can actually understand the Four Noble Truths, where you can have a breakthrough to understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing them to experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings. But it's actually your own mind. And you can get to that through independently verifying this teaching. That in the first Noble Truth, the Buddha is explaining the problem. That the problem that each individual who is unenlightened is experiencing is discontentedness, those conditioned feelings. As long as the mind continues to experience conditioned feelings, you can't be happy permanently. It's just not possible, because the mind is only happy when it gets what it wants. So in the unenlightened state, the mind is going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's happy and excited, but it's only a matter of time before you get annoyed or frustrated or agitated or some other discontent feeling. That's the problem that each unenlightened being is experiencing. Then the second Noble Truth is explaining the cause of that problem. That discontentedness is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, craving permanence while it lives in an impermanent world. So the mind craves for things to be permanent, but yet everything around you is impermanent. So think back to maybe like a boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. Maybe you were so happy and excited when you got together with them because they were showing you affection. They were inviting you out to dates and dinner and stuff like this. And maybe you were having sexual contact too. But then at some point you guys broke up. And now you were maybe sad or bored or lonely or angry or missing this person. This wasn't your love that was causing this. This was the mind holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life, when in reality they are impermanent. You can see this if you've had someone close to you that has died. Sometimes when people are grieving and sorrowful and sad, they think it's their love. But it's not the love that's causing that. That's holding on, craving permanence. That because grandma and grandpa are alive, the unenlightened mind's getting what it wants, and it'll be happy about that. But when somebody dies that's close to you, you'll be sad or angry or frustrated because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. When in reality, this person is not permanent in your life. But the mind's thinking that that's what's going to happen. But that's not true. The mind can see this maybe if you look at, say you got a brand new car and now you drove that car to the store and you come outside and it's got a scratch on it. You might be angry or frustrated or sad. It's not the scratch that's causing this, and it's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence. It wants this car to look permanently beautiful, when in reality, this car is not permanent. The paint's going to fade, the tire's going to need to be changed, the upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. And if you can see that this car is impermanent and you train your mind to not crave permanence, you can actually get to the point where you're peaceful and joyful. Now you can just make wise decisions to repair whatever is going on here or resolve this situation. But as long as the mind is craving permanence, it will have difficulties and struggles in that situation. And what it typically does is it blames other people for the feelings that you're having. You might be pushing people away out of your life. This is called aversion, where your mind thinks that this person is causing your anger and frustration or other discontent feelings. And the mind thinks if I push them out of my life, then that'll solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry. You still get frustrated or annoyed. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand the second noble truth is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll put your expectations on people, maybe trying to control them or pressure them to do things your way. And as long as you're doing this, you can't live harmoniously with all beings, because it's only a matter of time before you encounter people who are doing things differently than you. Because there's only one person in the world that actually does things your way 100% of the time, and that's yourself. Right? So as long as you have this craving for permanence in your mind, you're going to get to a point where you're experiencing discontentedness. But you need to be able to see this for yourself. You need to look at a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated. It could have been this morning, yesterday, or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes, because what the mind typically does is it tries to blame other people for the feelings that you're having. But if you peer into this with this fresh eyes and this new wisdom, you can see there was something your mind was longing, yearning for. And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind was angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. If you need help to see this, let me know when we get to the question period and I'll help you, because there's been plenty of people over the years that needed help with this. Once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment, the third noble truth explains that there's a solution here. That if you eliminate your discontent, if you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, you can eliminate your discontent feelings. Because if the cause is craving, desire, attachment, then the elimination is to eliminate the cause. If you eliminate the cause, you eliminate the effect. And the way to do that is in the fourth noble truth. That's the complete perfect plan. That's the solution. That it's the eightfold path that's going to guide you in completely eliminating all your discontent feelings. So that's why you need to be able to study the Eightfold Path to be able to see this clearly. It starts with right view. Having right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Wrong view would be to blame other people. And as long as you're blaming other people for the feelings you're having, you'll never actually solve them. You'll always be angry and have stress and anxiety and all these other feelings for the rest of your life. So if you're interested in getting away from those and eliminating them, you need to first understand what's causing it. So that's why the Buddha starts his teachings with right view. So by having right view, you can now start looking inward. Instead of blaming other people, you can start looking inward and figure out, what is my mind longing, yearning for here? What is it craving? And now you can actually solve it. So like, say, for example, you showed up to the airport where you're so excited to go to Thailand. And you just couldn't wait to get here. And you showed up and the flight was delayed or canceled. Well, if you get frustrated and agitated here, it's not the airline company that's causing that. That's the mind craving permanence. The mind wants every airplane to take off on time. And it's not possible because of impermanence. You live in an impermanent world. There's going to be maintenance issues, crew issues, weather issues. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with delays. But if you're frustrated and agitated or annoyed, and now maybe you're being bitter and hostile or harsh with the airline company, this isn't actually helping you. This is actually causing difficulties and struggles in the way that you interact with people. So the Buddha starts you off with right view. And since this is so important, and I just did a real brief overview, I'm just going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on this, either here at the temple or online. Remember, we have the microphones for you guys, and online, if you could put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, I will help you. So does anybody have questions on the Four Noble Truths, understanding how it's your own mind causing these feelings? No questions? Okay, let's see. We don't have any online either. Okay, so now we can move into right intention. Right intention is the second aspect of the Eightfold Path. This is sometimes translated as right thinking or right thought. Here's the words of the Buddha. And what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So he's talking about three things that you need to cultivate as part of your thinking or your thoughts, as part of making your way to enlightenment. What renunciation is the willingness to eliminate your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views, as well as your unwholesomeness. Because in the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that you have. One of the first false beliefs, false opinions, and false views that you need to eliminate is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry. As long as you continue to have that, you'll never get to enlightenment. So the mind will cling to its false ideas and false beliefs. If you experience anger, sadness, and frustration and these other feelings feelings, there's certain wisdom about this world that your mind doesn't currently have right now. And you need to be willing to have an open mind and bring in this new wisdom. But if you're clinging to your false beliefs and your false ideas, you're never going to be able to eliminate that. You're going to continue to hold on to that. So the Buddhist teachings, you're not bringing in new beliefs in order to get rid of your old beliefs. You're actually bringing in wisdom. And when you bring in wisdom and you see it conflicts with your current beliefs, then you need to eliminate that. You need to be willing to renunciate that, let that go. That's what it means to have the intention of renunciation. But if you're not willing to do that, if the mind's still holding on to what it currently thinks about the world, you'll never actually be able to experience enlightenment. So one of the first false ideas that the mind needs to eliminate, a false opinion, false view, false belief, is that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. And that's why it starts with the Eightfold Path starts with right view, so you can penetrate into that, independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Then there's that unwholesome moral conduct. In the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that the mind has. Then there's as part of right intention, there's the intention of non-ill will. When you're studying with English and you see a double negative like this, that's a positive, right? So non-ill will means goodwill. So having goodwill is to practice loving kindness towards all beings, having a genuine interest and seeing all beings be well. You're going to need to cultivate this as part of your thinking or your thoughts or your intentions. And the Buddha teaches you how to do that with things like meditation and other things as well. Then you're going to need the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. As long as you're putting harm out, this harm is going to come back to you. Now, you can't cause other people to be discontent. Just like you cause your own mind to be angry and sad and frustrated and all these other feelings, other people are causing their own discontent feelings too. But you can cause people harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. If you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, they're going to want to cause you harm back. That's the way that the unenlightened mind works. So as long as you're putting out harm, harm's going to keep coming back to you. And how would you ever get to peace and joy if you keep experiencing all this harm coming back to you? By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't experience any unwholesome karma. Your mind is completely at ease and peaceful. You're only experiencing wholesome karma. So you need to get to the point where you have the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So this is right intention here. And just as a little recap, this is the Four Noble Truths as part of right view, where you accept responsibility for your own feelings, intentions, speech, and actions. Because oftentimes people blame this on other people, and they think that it's other people that are causing this, where in reality it's coming from your own mind and your own decisions. And by you accepting that responsibility for it, now you can actually transform it. Then there's right intention or thinking or thought, where you practice the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions and views, as well as the unwholesome moral conduct that you have. Then you need to cultivate the thinking or the thought of non-ill will or goodwill, having loving kindness towards all beings, active goodwill towards all beings, and harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm to other beings. Understanding that you can't cause others to be discontent, but you can cause them harm by causing harm to their physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. So do you guys have any questions on this first section, the wisdom section? No questions? You have one? Yeah. Feel free to get a mic.
So with the right intention, there is the intention of harmlessness. My question is that in a world where not everyone practices this, how do you ensure, I feel like it's in direct competition with biology or with the survival instinct in some ways. Like, how do you allow yourself to be, in a harmless situation when someone else might be causing harm to you? So how do you practice this in that environment?
Sure. So a practice of loving kindness, which is the second part of right intention, where you're practicing the intention of of non-ill will, this is towards all beings, right? And whenever you're practicing something like loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, it starts with yourself, that you need to have loving kindness for this being too. So if somebody was coming at you with a knife or a gun or something like that, it wouldn't be very loving and kind to just let that person sit there and stab you, right? This being is going to get harmed. So if you need to cause harm to be able to stop that harm from coming, that is that person's Gama. Like say, for example, you're in your house at 2 a.m. in the morning and someone breaks into the window, right? And you can hear them coming in. Well, they're not bringing you chocolate and flowers, right? They're there to do harm, but that's their decision. You haven't made the intention or the thinking or the thought to go out into the world and be harmful to people. You're just sitting in your bed, sleeping or whatever. And now when you hear that person, you might try to get out, right? Where you go somewhere else. Hey, if they would like to steal something, if they'd like to, damage the house, you'll go somewhere else and call the police and let the police deal with it, right? But if they have you backed up against the corner, it wouldn't be very loving and kind to be able to just sit there and let them stab you. So any kind of harm that's coming to them, that's not your intention. Your intention is to practice loving kindness towards this being. But now you do need to cause harm to this being in order to stop that harm coming to you. So the Buddha doesn't teach to preserve all life at all costs. He's teaching you to practice these teachings where you can have loving kindness for all beings, and that starts with yourself. And in a situation like this, you would defend this being, and now that harm that that person's experiencing, it's because of their decisions. It's not because of your decisions.
I think with this, of course, like on an individual level, it makes sense, and usually the situations are quite straightforward. But then there can be like situations, this is just more philosophical. But for example, like war or things like that, right? Like how far, like if you allow this justification, then you can use it to justify almost any sort of, ill will or any sort of harm that you might cause under the guise of, self-preservation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're not seeing the full truth of what the Buddha is teaching you because you're not trying to justify anything. What the Buddha is helping you to be able to do is awaken to this natural law of cause and effect, this natural law of Gama. This natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, is what you're cultivating wisdom about. So going off into war is to go out with the intention of harmfulness. You're going out into the world with ill will, right? That's why if you go off to war, you're going to experience potentially getting killed yourself, getting a brain injury, getting an amputation. Maybe you get addicted to drugs and alcohol. Maybe when you come home to your home country, if you make it back, you might have difficulties reintegrating into society, having employment and housing and all these other things. So this path is not about justifying your current conduct. It's about seeing the natural law of cause and effect and how any decisions you make lead to a certain result. And what you can understand through the natural law of Gama is that it is oftentimes extremely unwise to go off to war because now that's why you're very likely to be killed yourself. But whether someone chooses to do that or not, that's a choice for them to make. What a Buddha is doing and what I'm doing as a teacher is just sharing with you what this natural law is so that you can see the truth for yourself, and then each individual person makes their own decisions. But it's not about justifying your current conduct. It's about training your mind to get rid of the pollutions so that now you can experience peace and joy. And if you have enough craving to go off into the world and you're actively looking to kill other people, that is going to produce unwholesome results in your life, and you won't get to peace and joy that way. So that's what the Buddha is guiding you to do, is get rid of these pollutions in the mind. And he's guiding you on how to be able to do that. So this path applies if you're interested to learn it and get to that level of wisdom and practice it. It absolutely works. I know this with 100% certainty. His teachings lead exactly where he said that they do. But you need to be able to bring your wisdom up to this level to be able to see what he's teaching you, which is this natural law, not to justify your current conduct. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So we're moving into this moral conduct section, because once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you understand that bitterness, harshness, and hostility that comes out in your relationships, that's all coming from your own mind. And the last thing you're interested in doing is being bitter and harsh and hostile with people, because as long as you put that out, it's coming back to you. So the Buddha gives you this guidance on moral conduct with right speech, right action, and right livelihood to be able to see how to make wise decisions around how you conduct yourself so you can develop harmonious relationships. He's helping you to see this natural law. Now, some people call this karma. That's the Sanskrit version. It's a different language. Where the Pali language, which the original teachings of the Buddha are in, it uses the word karma. So that's why I use this. If it translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be easier for everyone. But what this natural law is cause and effect, or action and result. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's helping you to be able to see the wise decisions that lead to wholesome results in your day-to-day life, and the unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. There's no being or entity that's overseeing this and controlling it to determine what you experience. It's your own decisions that are leading to any particular result that you experience. So the Buddha starts this section off with right speech, because you can actually harm through your speech, and now that harm's coming back to you. So here he teaches you to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, because this is helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's the cause of all discontentedness. When an individual is lying, there's something they're craving. They're longing, yearning for that. And if they tell the truth, they think they won't get what they want. So they end up lying. So if you lie, you're going to experience unwholesome results. That's the natural law of karma. People are going to discover your lies, and now they're not going to see you as trustworthy, dependable, and reliable. And it's going to put strain on your personal and professional relationships. So the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate lying. He's also teaching you to eliminate slander, which is gossip or damaging other people's reputation. Because whenever you do that, your mind's going to put out that harm, and harm is going to come back to you. What the mind's doing here is it has a craving to look good in front of other people and make somebody else look bad. So the mind thinks if I slander and gossip about people, that's what's going to get accomplished here. It's kind of like going into a dark room and thinking, everyone has a candle. I want to put out their candle so that my candle will shine brighter. Where in reality, it's actually making you look bad when you go out and you're gossiping and slandering about people. At the height of this, the cause and effect, the karma, is that if you're slandering and gossiping, you can actually be murdered. There's been people that have been killed and murdered. Remember, the Buddha's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And if you go out into the world and gossip and slander, you're very likely to experience some unwholesome results where there's fights and arguments or even murdered. At the very least, you're going to see that people are going to gossip and slander about you. Because if you get people used to gossiping and slandering, then when your back's turned and you walk away, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you because you got them used to gossiping and slandering. So if you're interested in people not gossiping and slandering about you, you're going to need to eliminate that in your own practice so that you're not gossiping and slandering. Then there's something called harsh speech. This is like your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. If you're bitter, harsh, and hostile in the way that you speak, that's all going to be putting out in your relationships, and it's all going to come back to you. This is why you can look in the relationships you have where you're bitter and harsh and hostile. Those people are that way with you too. But you can get to a point where you're speaking gentle at all times. But you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice. You'll find this to be the most challenging in relationships like your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, people that you're really close to. Because those are the people that you have craving, desire, attachment in. You have expectations of them. You want them to be a certain way. And now your mind's longing, yearning, and you'll find it to be challenging to speak gentle in those relationships. This is why you might think that they're the actual problem, because with your friends, maybe you can speak gentle and friendly, but that's because you don't have as deep of an attachment in those relationships. But in these other relationships, you have a really strong craving and expectations, things you want your parents or your siblings or your life partner or children to do. So you're going to need to pay attention to that and get more and more gentle in the way that you speak. And this is going to help you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. That's what the Buddha was saying that the Eightfold Path is for. Then there's frivolous speech. I don't know if you guys have ever been this person or you've been around this kind of person, but what frivolous speech is where someone's just talking and they're just talking endlessly, pointlessly. It's like yada, 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 yada. There's no conversation. It's really like broadcasting. And you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, when is this person going to be quiet, right? There's no discussion here. So if you're interested in being influential in your community, whether it's personal or professional, you're going to need to have purposeful and beneficial speech where you leave space for other people to have a conversation with you. Whereas if you were just yada, 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 this is the mind's craving to talk. It's longing, yearning to talk. So the Buddha's teaching you right speech about how to knock down your cravings. And he teaches you this as part of the Eightfold Path. But then there's another teaching that integrates into the Eightfold Path. It's called the 5 Factors of Well-Spoken Speech. Here, I suggest that you actually study this in our book. I usually walk students through this step by step, but just based on the time that we have this evening, I'm not going to be able to walk you through this entire teaching, but I will share one thing with you, is proper time. Speaking at the proper time is to make sure that you're not interrupting other people, because with the mind's craving, you will oftentimes want to hurry up and jump in there and conversate, where you need to wait your turn. The other part of speaking the proper time is making sure that your mind is prepared to talk. If you're angry, if you're frustrated or irritated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk, because that's all that's going to come out. And then also you'd like to make sure that the proper time for the other person, if they're angry and frustrated and bitter and harsh, it's not the proper time to actually talk. So you'd like to make sure it's the proper time to speak, because this is going to produce the best results. Now, while the Buddha referred to this as right speech, because that's all that was going on during the time, we might actually think of this as right communication, because we actually communicate in a lot more ways than just speech. So, for example, if you were practicing right speech and you went into a job interview and you knocked it out of the park and you were doing really well, but they looked at your social media and you're bitter and harsh and hostile, you're probably not going to get the job. Right? So you would like to be able to speak in a way that you're using all of these factors that the Buddha is sharing here, so that way you can develop wise speech and wholesome relationships. If you're not speaking in this way right now, it's okay, because there's going to be a certain amount of difficulties and struggles that you're having because of that. Whenever you look at a relationship or a conversation that didn't go well, you can see that you and or the other person wasn't speaking at the proper time. You weren't speaking the truth. You weren't speaking gently. You weren't speaking beneficially, which is clear and concise. And you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. If you speak the opposite of this, your conversation isn't going to go very well, and it can erupt into difficulties and struggles. So these are the natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you of cause and effect to help you be able to see wise decision-making around your moral conduct. And then after you have understood right speech and you start working on that over a consistent long-term period, you would also like to be understanding right action. This is to not cause harm through your bodily actions. And the Buddha gives you 3 impactful ones here, but he doesn't give you an exhaustive list. He talks about killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. But here he just talks about it in a very general way, where in the 5 precepts, he actually talks about it with much more elaborate detail. If you've heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, the Buddha didn't teach that. That is not his teachings. He actually used much more illuminating language. That sounds like rules and commandments. It sounds like black and white. The Buddha didn't teach that. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to be teaching chapter 7 from our book, which is the 5 precepts. And I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand this, because this here is just 3 really impactful bodily actions that could potentially cause harm, but you're going to need to understand all the others. And the Buddha never gives you an exhaustive list, because it would be impossible for him to do that. But if you understand this step, then you can apply it in all parts of your life. So for example, notice he doesn't say, it would be unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Well, if you understand the natural law of karma, you understand that, well, if you punch someone in the face, they're probably going to punch you back, or they're going to pull out a gun or a knife, or their friends or family are going to attack you, right? So it would be unwise to do that. Or notice that he doesn't say it would be unwise to walk through the aisle of an airplane and drag your suitcase, running over people's feet and bumping into their knees. Well, airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime, so he wouldn't have taught that. So you're going to need to apply this in all parts of your life. And notice here that he talks about sexual misconduct. Sometimes people are curious about what that is. I'm, again, going to explore that for you when we get to chapter 7. But just as a heads up, sexual misconduct doesn't include same-gender relationships. Sometimes people think that it must include that. But the Buddha was wise. He understood that same-gender relationships doesn't cause harm. If you have two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, they're not actually causing harm to anyone. Because of the universal truth of impermanence, you can see that there's never been a time in history where everybody had sex with the opposite gender. That would be permanence. Ever since the beginning of humanity, some people have sex with the same gender and some people have sex with the opposite gender. So if you're someone who has same gender relationships, or you know someone who does, you're not causing any harm. You'll see the Buddha explains this in the 5 precepts, where he talks about sex with minors, he talks about sex without consent, he talks about going outside of your relationships. All of this is going to cause harm, and I'll help you guys to be able to see that. Then the Buddha talks about right livelihood. This is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. If you choose to sustain your life in a harmful way, where you're causing harm, that harm is going to come back to you. So in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha just says something very general and very broad, but then he goes into more detail in other parts of his teachings. Here he talks about eliminating weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, because these are all things that cause harm. This is the natural law. So I'll show you how to independently verify this so that you're not believing any of these teachings. It's not rules or commandments or any kind of belief. So for example, let's take this one of substances that cause heedlessness. If I stood on the street corner and I sold crystal methamphetamine and heroin into the community, I'm causing harm. And now, based in that decision, there's going to be harm that comes to me, because the harm that I'm causing is these people are getting addicted to this substance. They're going out and stealing and robbing and maybe selling their body in order to bring me money. And now, standing on the street corner, I can easily get beat up. I can get robbed. I can get murdered, I can get arrested, I can get addicted to these substances myself. These are all the results of my own decisions of choosing to actually stand on the street corner and sell substances. So nobody's causing this for me. It's my decisions that are leading to this. And that's the power in the natural law of karma, is that if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. But oftentimes what people think is that they're experiencing in life is good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or they think that God is controlling what they experience, or they think that there's some entity called the universe that is causing them to experience any particular result in the world, or that it's other people that are causing them to experience things. These things aren't true. Everything that you're experiencing is a result of decisions that you're making. And the real power in this is to be able to cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and now you experience different results. So the Buddha is teaching you these livelihoods would cause harm, and it would be wise for you to not do these. So then he teaches you how to perform your livelihood in a way that will be successful, because he's helping you to get to a point where you enjoy the work that you're doing. Right now, if you're dragging yourself to work each day and you despise the work that you're doing, that's not going to lead to peacefulness and joy in your life. And the Buddha is teaching you how to get to a point where you have harmony in all parts of your life. So he's teaching you here that it would be unwise to have scheming. What scheming is corruption. So say, for example, I was a mayor of a town. I'm not causing any harm by being a mayor, but if I was corrupt and I was scheming on the side, people are going to find out about that. And within a matter of years, then they're going to find out, and now they're not going to reelect me, and I'll have difficulty supporting myself. Or say there's flattery. What this is where you're giving insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. Maybe you've been into this kind of store where you walk in and someone's like, wow, you're so handsome. You're so beautiful. That shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. Oh, the shape of your face is so interesting. You know, I have this other product over here that would be really nice. If you purchase this, it'll go really well with your shirt, right? They're just trying to flatter you in order to get you to buy something. If you've ever experienced this, you might have been kind of like, ugh, you don't even want to go in the store. So the Buddha is teaching you that it's unwise to do that, because people do business with people. They don't do business with businesses. They do business with people. And if you don't form a healthy relationship with your customers, you're not going to be able to have a sustaining livelihood. Then he talks about hinting. What this is let's just say all of us are on a project team and we need to go brief the boss. Well, if we're clear and concise about the work that we're doing, that's going to produce better results for us. Whereas if we're hinting around and we're not really clear on what it is that we're working on, we're not going to be able to advance in our employment so well. So the Buddha teaches you to eliminate hinting. Then he talks about belittling. This is where you're degrading or diminishing other people in your livelihood, like your customers, your business partners, your competition, people like this. If you're degrading and diminishing others, it's not going to go well for you. So sometimes people think that you belittle your competition and that's going to make you look good. But instead, you can just say things like, well, I'm not quite sure what they do 100%, but this is what I can do for you. You don't need to degrade and diminish other people, because if you're degrading your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, or your competition, your livelihood isn't going to go so well for you. Then he teaches you about eliminating pursuing gain with gain. What this is where you're just taking the job in order to get money. And that's all you care about. You don't care about the product. You don't care about the service. You're just going there to collect a paycheck. And if this is what you're doing, you'll probably see that at the beginning of that job, that you'll have a lot of excitement because you're getting all this new money, but then that'll wear off. And now you'll feel mundane and like you're dragging yourself to work each day. So you would like to get to the point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. We might have actually run into people like this here in Thailand. There's typically people that are standing out there selling mango and sticky rice. And maybe that person woke up this morning and they went out in their mango grove. They picked each one of their mangoes, brushed them off, put them into their basket. They brought them to the market and they're standing there with a big smile on their face, slicing up their mango, putting it over top of that warm sticky rice and pouring that coconut milk over it. And they're handing it to you with a big smile on their face. And they're collecting their little 40 baht. But the 40 baht doesn't even matter. They can't imagine doing anything other than serving you that mango and sticky rice, because they just enjoy doing it so much that the money doesn't even matter. They need to collect it in order to be able to sustain their life, but that's not why they're there. They thoroughly enjoy serving you this mango and sticky rice. So what you need to do is you need to find your mango and sticky rice. What's your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you'll thoroughly enjoy that you can't imagine doing anything else other than that in the world? And the money is like almost just a something on the side. That yes, of course you're making money, but that's not the primary purpose of why you're doing this particular work. And this is going to help you get to the point where you have enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation in your work. So if you're in between jobs right now, or if you're in a job that you don't particularly care for, there's additional teachings beyond this that are actually going to help you get to a right livelihood. It's in volume 12, chapter 14. You can actually study that in our book series. And all these books are available at no cost. You can download them from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us, or you can order it on Amazon. And this way you can get access to the teachings and be able to learn them. So this is the moral conduct section where you're not causing harm through your speech, your actions, or your livelihood. Do you guys have questions on this, where the Buddha is helping you to see this natural law of cause and effect? Okay, I don't see any questions here or online. Okay, so this last section is the mental discipline section. All these sections actually work together. If it wasn't for the mental discipline section, you wouldn't be able to implement the moral conduct. Because it's one thing to sit here and talk about, yeah, let's be loving and kind with our parents and our brothers and our sisters and all these people in our life. Intellectually, you can sit here and talk about that, and you might think, yeah, that's a great idea. But when you go out into the world and you're actually trying to be loving and kind, your pollutions of your mind are going to take over, and it's going to be really challenging for you to be loving and kind. So you wouldn't be able to implement the moral conduct section without the wisdom section, to be able to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But you wouldn't be able to implement the moral conduct without the mental discipline. So here the Buddha is going to teach you how to discipline your mind so that you can control it. Because when you have stress, anxiety, and anger and frustration, You don't have control over your mind in that situation. That's why you've done things that are unwise in those situations. So here the Buddha is talking about right effort. This is to apply effort or energy towards eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. You can read this from our book where you can see what the Buddha is teaching here. But what I've done is I've actually broke this down here on this slide where you can see it more clearly without the connecting words, but it makes sense for you to actually study and penetrate into it with the original words of the Buddha. But what he's teaching you is 4 things. He's teaching you to prevent unwholesome mental states from arising in the mind. There's certain unwholesome mental states that are not in your mind right now, and you would like to prevent them from ever coming into the mind. An example of that is like killing another human being. You probably have no interest in killing another human being. It's the farthest thing from your mind right now. You're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those kinds of things from ever coming into the mind. Because once it comes into the mind, you might act upon certain things, and now it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life. Then the second part is any unwholesome states that are in your mind now, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate those. Because as an unenlightened being, there's going to be certain unwholesome things that are currently in your mind. Like, for example, if you were in a current relationship and you were thinking about having sex outside of that relationship, if you allow that thought to stay in your mind, that mental state, you might act upon it, and now it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So you'd like to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Or say something like anger and frustration. As you're noticing that coming up into the mind, now you would like to apply the effort to eliminate that. Then the Buddha teaches you to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. Because there's certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need as part of this journey, and they're not currently in your mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into the mind. So for example, something like generosity. Generosity is giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. This is going to train your mind to let go, because in the unenlightened state with craving, desire, attachment, you're going to tend to hold on to things very tight, and you're not going to be willing to share with others. But if you apply the effort to bring this generosity into your mind, now when you're practicing generosity, it'll help your mind to be trained to let go. So if you find it hard to share with others, if you find that you're somewhat selfish, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into your mind. Or the fourth one here, the Buddha is talking about maintaining wholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. Bring them to full growth, full perfection, full development. Because there's certain wholesome qualities that are in your mind right now. And you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into your mind more and more and more. So for example, this sympathetic joy. This is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of envy or jealousy. When you're envious and jealous, it's being caused by your own mind because you have a certain craving where you want something and you didn't get it and somebody else got it instead, and now you're jealous or envious of that. So in some situations, you probably have sympathetic joy. Like if someone's like, hey, I'm going to go to Thailand. I'm thinking about planning a trip in about 3 to 6 months. You might be like, oh, I've been to Thailand. You'll have a really good time. They have this lady that sells mango and sticky rice on the corner. You might actually go see her. It's really, really good, right? You might actually be joyful for their success. But now let's just say you're at work and there's a new position that opens up and you apply for it and somebody else applies for it. It's a higher salary, better office, better responsibilities, nicer title, and maybe they get it instead of you. And maybe you're jealous or envious in this situation. This is because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. You need to be able to apply the effort to bring that into the mind and bring it up into the mind more and more and more. So this is right effort, but you wouldn't be able to practice right effort until you understood and practiced the next step. The examples that I'm using here are just examples to help you understand right effort, but you're going to need this next step to understand what is wholesome that is in your mind and what is unwholesome that is in your mind, because you're going to need to be able to apply right effort. And that's what right mindfulness does. Right mindfulness is going to help you to be able to observe your mind and be aware of what's going on in your mind. Again, these are the words of the Buddha, and you would be wise to learn this. But what I'm going to do is break this down and help you to be able to see this. What the Buddha is talking about here is reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He talks about reflecting on feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and mental objects as mental objects. What he's talking about here is practicing awareness of mind. That's what you need, is you need to have awareness of mind. But more specifically, he's talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So oftentimes people are using this word mindfulness in a different way than what the Buddha used it as. Somebody might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? Well, that's not what the Buddha is saying. What they're doing is they're just replacing the word careful with mindful, right? That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. And if someone else would like to think of it that way, that's on them. But if you would like to learn what the Buddha is teaching and get to a better understanding of this word, then you would like to understand that it means awareness of mind. That's what you need to cultivate in your mind, to have awareness of your thoughts and ideas, your feelings and emotions. You're going to need to have that awareness. But then more specifically, you're going to need to know the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is the life cycle that your discontentedness is taking before you actually experience any particular feeling. So prior to experiencing anger, which that is a feeling, before experiencing that, there's a bodily sensation that you're experiencing that you may or may not be aware of right now. It might be tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensations associated with the arising of anger. And what the Buddha is teaching you is to apply effort to cut that off and let it go. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing your feelings. You're cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. This is an early warning system, alerting you that you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated or annoyed, and you can actually cut that off and let it go. It's kind of like if you were going to take a boat from the UK to Canada and you were out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. Once the anger gets into your mind, you've got a real problem to deal with at this point. You've got to get it out. So if you can cut it off and let it go before it becomes a feeling, you've just protected your mind and preserved your mind. And if you can do this enough, eventually you'll get to the point where the anger will never arise because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. So you need to be able to have awareness of this early warning system, these bodily sensations that are there alerting you that your mind's about to become discontent. If you miss it as a bodily sensation, you'd like to cut it off as a feeling because that's the next best option. But if you miss it there, it's going to then affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry or irritated or grumpy for like a couple of hours or a couple of days or a week or two? Have you ever experienced that? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't understand this. Your mind is experiencing this discontentedness. And now you are angry or frustrated, irritated, or grumpy for an extended period of time. And you might have even been blaming other people because that's what the mind does in the unenlightened state. But you can actually transform this by understanding and being able to be aware of that condition of mind so that you can cut it off and let it go. And then there's something called mental objects. Mental objects are deeply rooted containers in your mind. And in this example, it would be ill will. If you are familiar with what's called the 10 fetters, which I taught this 2 weeks ago, these are the 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. These are the deeply rooted containers that the Buddha is teaching you to be aware of so that you can uproot them and eliminate them out of the mind. If you're not aware of the symptoms of these pollutions, you'll never be able to observe them and notice that they're in your mind and then to be able to uproot them and eliminate them out of the mind. So this is a bit of the technical description of what this stuff is. But let me explain to you how it looks in day-to-day life. Let's just say you're watching the news. You're sitting back on the sofa and you're watching the news and you're seeing and hearing something. And now you're noticing this tingling in the body, this tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. You know you're about to get angry, but it's just a bodily sensation right now. Rather than sit there and let the mind dwell in that and the mind stays wired that way, what the Buddha is teaching you is to apply right effort to cut that off and let that go. What that's going to look like is turning off the TV. Get up and go for a bike ride. Go for a walk. Go wash your hands in the bathroom. Go get a drink from the kitchen or something like that. If you allow your mind to continue to sit there and form that feeling, then your mind's just going to stay wired that way. So those bodily sensations is like the mind saying, I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get frustrated. I'm about to get irritated. And you say, nope, not going to let you do that. And if you do that enough, eventually you'll never get angry or frustrated because the causes and conditions that are producing it have been uprooted out of the mind. And then eventually you'll be able to just watch the news and you won't get angry and you won't get frustrated any longer. But the mind needs to be trained during this training period. Well, this mindfulness wouldn't actually be able to be practiced without the last step, the right concentration. What the Buddha teaches for right concentration is to develop a meditation practice. And that's what's going to help you to develop your mindfulness because you practice breathing mindfulness meditation. That meditation that we just did, that's where you're focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut it off and let it go and come back. So when that mind moves off the breath, that's your mindfulness. You're aware that that has occurred, right? The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to notice it sooner and sooner and cut it off and let it go easier and easier. So if you notice that your mind moved off the breath, that's your mindfulness. And now you train your mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind's holding on. It's clinging. It's craving permanence. It doesn't know how to let go. That's why when you first broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you were angry or frustrated for a period of time because your mind was holding on. But at some point you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But the mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. And that's where this breathing mindfulness meditation comes in. And then there's other meditations that are going to help you as well. And then you'd also like to be practicing singleness of mind. This is where you're doing just one thing at a time. Oftentimes people think that they can multitask. Your mind actually can't multitask. It's physically impossible. What you're actually doing is you're spending 3 to 5 seconds on one thing, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else, and you're spending 6 or 8 seconds there, and now you're rapidly cycling over here and spending 10 seconds over here. It's kind of like a horse running around a racetrack. And if you've ever been to a racetrack and you saw horses racing around the racetrack, when they go to the barn, they're all hyped up. They can't calm down. Right? And that's the same thing that happens when you go to work and you're racing around and racing around and racing around. When you come home, you might find it very difficult to relax, where you have stress and anxiety in your mind. So you need to be able to do just one thing at a time. So if you're noticing that you're washing dishes and your mind's wandering, you'd like to cut that off, right? So your mindfulness is going to help you to notice that your mind's wandering, and then you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. So more and more you can practice concentration and focus. The way you might think about this is if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod, if you tried to grind that back and forth, at the beginning, it's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove here yet. That's what your mind does when you first start training. It's bouncing around all over the place. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a nice groove going. And then when it pops out, you're going to notice that and you're going to be able to bring it back. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get such a deep groove that it never pops out. And that's the way your mind is, that eventually if you practice concentration through meditation and singleness of mind in your day-to-day life, eventually your mind will be so concentrated it will never pop out. This is the natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you again, because by doing one thing at a time, you can be more productive. You can actually be more successful. There's people that don't understand this. And those people, some of them are actually even dead right now. Because if you're walking down the street trying to talk on the phone and you walk out in the middle of the street, well, whack. There's people that have been killed because they were trying to do two things at one time and their mind's incapable of doing that. So you'd like to just do one thing at a time where you can have focus and concentration and clarity. And by honing your mind this way, you'll have it available to you at all times. So this is right concentration. And all of these steps are actually working together to be able to build your practice to gradually move your mind to enlightenment. So this last part here, just a summary, is right effort is taking initiative to eliminate the unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. You need to apply the effort to do that. It's not going to just happen naturally. You can't just sit under a tree, meditate, and instantly get to enlightenment. You're going to need to apply effort and determination and dedication to consciously work towards this enlightened mental state. Then you're going to need to have mindfulness, which is awareness of mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then you're going to need to practice right concentration, where you're developing a meditation practice and you're practicing singleness of mind. Now, I just did an overview of this, where earlier in this program, I actually spent 3 class periods to walk through this piece by piece. I spent 1 whole class period on each one of these sections. But here, what I usually do is just kind of do an overview of this teaching. You're going to need to really dive into this and memorize this teaching, commit it to memory. I have study guides online for free. I have books and videos, podcasts. You can even get personal guidance to be able to sit down and learn this if you like. So if you'd like to learn this and be able to get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful, there's help for you. You just need to decide that you're done with the broken relationships. You're tired of the stress and anxiety. You're tired of the frustration and anguish that you experience. And this is what's going to help you to move closer and closer to this peaceful and joyful mental state. So do you guys have any questions on the Eightfold Path? Yes, sir.
With the last one, the mental discipline, I had a couple of questions. One is you gave an example of anger. Could you give an example of lust and stress, if it's possible? And number 2.
Let me just do one question at a time.
Okay.
Yeah. So if an individual has a craving for sexual contact with lust, you can get to the point where you see your mind longing, yearning for that particular thing, whatever it is, whether it's pornography, whether it's an actual person, masturbation, whatever it is. You can see your mind longing, yearning. This is coming up in the mind, and you can choose to reduce that or ultimately eliminate it by the time you get to enlightenment. Oftentimes people work their way to the second stage of enlightenment, where you are still able to have a sexual relationship, because in that stage of enlightenment, there's still sensual desire, but you're still going to be experiencing discontentedness to a certain degree. But if you're interested in getting to complete peace and complete joy, you won't be able to do that as long as you have sexual craving in your mind. So there's meditation that's helping you to be able to knock this down, but this right mindfulness, you'll be able to get to the point where you see your mind longing, yearning for sexual contact. And that's where, depending on your decision, whether you're either reducing or eliminating your sexual desire, you can work to cut that off and let it go. It's kind of like a wild bush, that if this wild bush is growing, you're cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. And now eventually you uproot it out of the mind and it's not there anymore. And stress is the same way, that you can catch it before it becomes a feeling of stress. But stress is more of a mental condition versus a feeling, because it's persistent and long term. But prior to getting there, there's a bodily sensation that is occurring. So if you can hone your mind to get to the point where you see it arising, you can actually cut it off before it comes into the mind. But this is part of the practice. It'll take you multiple years to get to enlightenment. It's not a 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month kind of thing. But as you gradually develop your mind and your ability to do this, now you can get ahead of the curve and you can get to the point where you're catching it before it comes into the mind as a bodily sensation.
Okay. And my second question was regarding like the singleness of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, we live in this world where I am a programmer. I'm also like building a business. So with AI especially, I see that I can do things a lot faster. But then there's this pressure, right? Because your competition is working on before maybe a product might take 1 month to develop, and now it takes like a week or maybe even 2-3 days to develop. So your brain completely just keeps on, like the mental cycles are quite high.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if you could expand more. I think the stress part also relates to this. So if it's already like a persistent thing that you go through, how can you reduce it, and how can you, get relief from it?
Yeah, those are choices that your mind's making, where the mind's craving money or craving a certain level of success with the growth of your business, or perhaps, craving to be seen by others as a professional. There's any number of cravings that the mind can have under there, and the mind's chasing it and chasing it and chasing it and chasing it, and thinking that if I can just get that thing, everything in my life will be better, rather than gradually working towards a goal, objective, or interest through wise decisions. That you can have goals and objectives, but you need to be sure you understand what a goal and objective is, because oftentimes if people accomplish their goal, they're happy, but if they don't accomplish their goal, they're angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling like guilt or shame. That's not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. The mind's longing, yearning, and it's basing its feelings on whether it gets this thing or not. And then if you were all the way on the other side, where you were just could care less and you were indifferent about what you're experiencing in the world, you're not going to experience peace and joy there either. So the Buddha is teaching you to come to the middle, where you're gradually pursuing your goals, objectives, or interests, but you're not forming your feelings based on whether you accomplish this thing or not. So if you're working towards something and you're 80% of the way there, you can look at it and say, okay, well, I'm 80% of the way there. Maybe I can extend my timeline, give myself more time, or maybe I can add resources, or you know what, 80% is fine. I'll just stick with the 80%. But when the mind's craving and desiring and it's chasing and it's wanting money and it's wanting this and wanting that, you won't do that. So you need to learn and train your mind how to come to the middle through this entire path to gradually pursue your professional objectives, but not with craving, desire, attachment, with true goals, and understanding that you, as long as you keep allowing your mind to chase and chase and chase like this, that's what it's going to keep doing. It's kind of like a dog chasing a rabbit, and it chases, 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 chases. And even when it catches the rabbit and it kills it, it gets bored with it and doesn't even eat it, right? So it's the same kind of thing, that the mind in the unenlightened state will chase after all these things. And even when you get it, you'll get happy temporarily, but then you'll get bored with it. And now you'll want more and more and more. So there's a way for you to pursue professionally how to, develop your career and actually have lots of success. In fact, you'll have way more success as an enlightened being than you ever did as an unenlightened being. But you need to understand the entire path and practice this consistently, so that when you are in work and you see your mind chasing, that you can restrain it and pull it back. So like meditation, when you're focused on the breath and it moves off the breath and you bring it back, that's just kind of exercising the mind, so that in day-to-day life, when you see your mind doing that, you can restrain it and pull it back. It's kind of like riding a horse. You can pull it back. But if you haven't been practicing meditation consistently, you won't see it in your day-to-day life and you won't be able to pull it back. So you're going to need to be able to practice the meditations and all these other factors in all parts of your life, including in work. There's nothing about our society today that would inhibit you from being able to get to enlightenment. In fact, you're able to more easily get to enlightenment today than even during the lifetime of the Buddha. Because during the lifetime of the Buddha, as a household practitioner, you would have been busy just carrying water back and forth to the well and sustaining your life and planting crops and harvesting food and making clothes and all these other things that we needed to do in order to sustain our life. Where today we have so much free time in our life that people usually fill it up with unbeneficial things. So you actually have more time to meditate. You have more time to learn the teachings. You have more time to dedicate to understanding the wisdom that it takes to get to enlightenment. So you just need to learn this, commit it to your memory, and then practice it on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see that it actually works. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. You can see those on our bulletin board there, or on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You'll see our events calendar. Next week on Sunday, I actually won't be here. I'm leaving tomorrow to the U.S. to teach for about a month, and then I'm going to be coming back. But there's going to be other people here teaching on Wednesday and next Saturday and Sunday. And even me, I'm going to be zooming in and teaching sometimes. We actually have our schedule over there is fully up to date of when we're having events. And there's also a schedule on the door as well for students to be able to see what's going on since I'm going to be gone for about a month. So if you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. Feel free to reach out if you need help to get plugged into any of these resources, and you can get started. I suggest with this first book, that's the best place to get started. So whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.